The sirens screamed through the back alley, bouncing off graffiti-stained walls. Officer Marcus Jalen held his partner back, heart-pounding voice low. "Don't," he warned. "He's already cuffed." But Officer Ray Brandt wasn't listening. He slammed the suspect's head into the hood of the cruiser twice before lighting a cigarette like nothing happened. Blood trickled down the boy's temple. When Internal Affairs asked what happened, Ray's report came fast. He resisted. "Marcus will confirm." But Marcus didn't. He told the truth. And that's when everything changed. He was pulled off the street, demoted, reassigned to a quiet, leafy district where the loudest crime was a stolen bicycle. They called him a coward, a traitor. Even his family wondered why he didn't fight back. He said nothing, just smiled, nodded, and walked his beat. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Marcus was still working, still watching. And when the past finally caught up with Ray Brandt, the quietest man in the precinct would turn out to be the loudest echo of justice. Stay with this story, because the truth he uncovers will haunt you. The locker room smelled like old sweat and disinfectant, a sterile attempt to cover up the grit that soaked into every corner of the 41st precinct. Marcus Jalen sat on the edge of the bench, unlacing his boots with methodical calm. His partner Ray Brandt leaned against the wall, a smirk tugging at his lips as he watched Marcus silently pack up his gear. "You're really going through with it, huh?" Ray asked, voice low and loaded. Marcus didn't answer right away. His fingers moved steadily, folding his uniform shirt with the kind of care a man reserves for something he's leaving behind for good. "I gave them my statement. I'm not changing it." Ray laughed under his breath, a single harsh bark. "You just signed your own transfer papers, brother." That word brother hung in the air like a taunt. They'd ridden together for nearly 5 years. Shared car shifts, late-night coffees, and too many stories of past arrests and personal scars. But everything had changed last week. A call had come in, 2 kids tagging walls in North Terrace. A routine pickup. But when they caught one, Ray snapped. The kid, a wiry teen, maybe 16, ended up bleeding in the back seat. Marcus had pulled him off. The kid never fought back. When the sergeant asked for the report, Ray handed his over. It was clean, sanitized. Then Marcus submitted his, and the silence that followed was louder than any gunshot. Ray stepped closer now, his grin fading. "You know what they'll do. You think you're some kind of hero, but this place eats people like you. You don't rat on your own, not unless you want to vanish." Marcus stood slowly, taller than Ray by a good inch, but calmer, always calmer. His eyes held steady. "I didn't rat. I just told the truth." Ray didn't reply. He just walked out, slamming the locker room door behind him. By the next morning, Marcus's reassignment orders were on the chief's desk. The new precinct was smaller, cleaner. Its brick walls were painted a pale yellow that made the whole place look like an elementary school. A board in the front listed block assignments and school patrol shifts. Marcus scanned the names, none familiar. No one looked up when he walked in. Sergeant Clarice Dean met him with a polite but wary expression. "Jalen Wright, you'll be working Grafton Loop. Low crime. High complaints about lawn sprinklers and raccoons." She handed him a laminated map. Marcus nodded, expression unreadable. "Understood." Clarice studied him a second longer. "You're not here on disciplinary, are you?" "No, ma'am." "Good." She glanced toward the window. "We like things quiet here." Outside, a soft wind rustled the trees. A black cat darted between hedges. And just beyond the community park, a child's laughter echoed across the cul-de-sac. His first few days were uneventful, almost unsettlingly so. No thefts, no fights. The most dramatic call involved a teenager locked out of his house without a phone. But that didn't mean people welcomed him. At the Copper Mug, the local bar conversations died when he walked in. At the coffee shop, a cashier whispered to another worker when he ordered his drink. "That's the one they sent down from Eastline. The one who turned on his own." Some days it felt like he wore a scarlet letter under his uniform. Still, Marcus said little. He walked his beat, took notes, watched everything, especially the grey sedan that passed through Grafton Loop twice a week. Always slow, always around 6:40 p.m. The driver never got out, just circled once, then left. The plate traced back to a rental service used often by off-duty cops. Marcus filed that away. He wasn't just killing time. One evening, as he paused outside a rundown community center, a boy approached. No older than 15, wiry and tall, with wary eyes and a twitchy stance. "Hey, you Jalen," the kid asked, hands buried deep in a hoodie. Marcus nodded. The kid looked around, then pulled something from his sleeve. A flash drive. "My cousin said to give you this if anything happened to him." "You knew him, Carlos Vega." Marcus's jaw tightened. Carlos had been the kid Ray beat down during that arrest. The boy looked up, voice barely a whisper. "They found him last week. OD. But he didn't use. Not ever." Marcus took the flash drive with a steady hand. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Luis." Marcus nodded. "You were brave to come to me, Luis." The kid shrugged and walked off without another word. Later that night, in his small apartment above a shuttered bookstore, Marcus plugged in the flash drive. What he found was chaos. Phone footage, voice memos, a spreadsheet of names, places, times, some of them tied directly to Ray Brandt. One note scribbled in a text file stood out. "He's running something. Side jobs, payoffs. Cops help him. One wears a wire. Not sure who." Marcus stared at the screen. Carlos had tried to bring him something and died for it. That night, Marcus started a new file on his locked tablet. Title, Brandt Ongoing. Subsection, Asset Lost. Continue quietly. The next morning, a local woman waved him down outside her fence. Mid-30s, auburn hair, gardening gloves on. "You're the new officer." Marcus right. He nodded. "I'm Lena, my late husband. Used to serve. We lived in North Terrace. I recognize you." There was no accusation in her voice, only quiet curiosity. "I remember you," Marcus said softly. "He was kind. Always kind." Lena nodded once. "He said the system needed more men like you." Marcus looked away, then back. What was his name again? Elias Rowan. A flicker of recognition passed through Marcus's eyes. Ray had hated Elias, called him a soft file cop. And now here was Elias's widow looking at Marcus with the kind of grace no one else gave him anymore. She smiled, then held out a glass of water. "You look like you need one." Marcus took it, and for the first time in weeks, felt something ease. Spring came softly to Grafton Loop. The trees bloomed with patient determination, and the air carried that faint, earthy sweetness that made even the skeptical believe in renewal. For Marcus, it marked nearly 8 months since his transfer. He still rose early, still kept his shoes polished, his uniform crisp, still walked his beat with measured steps, but behind the quiet facade, a slow current of purpose moved, like groundwater, persistent and invisible. Each morning Marcus checked the mailroom. Not for letters, but for the subtle drop-offs he'd set up through back channels, flash drives slipped between junk mail printed sheets buried under fake reports. An old friend in internal affairs, Noah Cheng, helped where he could. No one else knew, not even Lena, especially not Lena. She was outside again, trimming rose bushes with focused care. "Morning," she called as Marcus passed. He slowed. "You're out here earlier than usual." She brushed her hair back with her forearm. "They're blooming fast, like they're in a rush to be seen." Marcus smiled faintly. "Flowers don't rush. People do." She paused. "You're different, you know. Most men, especially officers, they rush through everything." He looked at her. Really looked. In the sunlight, her freckles emerged under the makeup she rarely wore. Her hands were rough from the soil, but sure in their movements. "Maybe I don't have anywhere to rush to," he said. There was a pause. Then she handed him a small, thornless bud. "You do. You just don't know it yet." Later that week, a routine disturbance call took Marcus to the outskirts of the neighborhood, near a cluster of abandoned properties. Graffiti marked the garage doors. Old flyers flapped against chain-link fences. The caller had mentioned shouting. When Marcus approached the address, he saw 2 men arguing beside a silver sedan. One of them turned. Recognition flared in Marcus's chest. Terry Hodge, Ray Brandt's former informant. The man froze. Jalen. Marcus didn't break stride. "Evening, gentlemen." "Loud out here." Terry licked his lips. "Didn't know you were transferred down here. I get around." The second man, younger and twitchy, spoke up. "We're just talking." Marcus's eyes slid to the trunk, slightly ajar. He tapped it once. This talking involved merchandise. Neither answered. I'll pretend I didn't see it. This time, Marcus said evenly. But you tell Ray I'm still around, and I'm still watching. Terry's eyes narrowed. You think he cares? You're off the radar now. Dead weight. Marcus leaned in slightly. Then why does he keep sending his rats down here? No reply, just the creak of the trunk as it was shut hard. Back at his apartment, Marcus added the plate number and timestamp to his file. He uploaded 2 more photos, faces, timestamps, geolocation. His drive was nearly full now. He encrypted it, backed it up, printed 2 copies. One he hid under a loose floorboard near his bed. The other he would deliver soon. The following Friday, Lena invited him to dinner. Nothing fancy, just soup and grilled bread, her table lit by a flickering candle that left dancing shadows on the ceiling. They spoke of mundane things, her volunteer work, his rounds, the new crossing guard, who couldn't stop talking about UFOs. But eventually her tone changed. Can I ask you something, Marcus? He looked up. My husband, Elias. He died during a domestic dispute. But there were rumors about an officer involved, about a case he was trying to file. Was that? Her voice trailed off like she already regretted asking. Marcus took a long breath. I knew Elias, he said. He was honest, quiet, too good for Eastline. Lena's eyes shone with unshed tears. I always thought someone helped it along. His death. It wasn't right, and no one cared. Marcus didn't move, didn't blink, but inside something fractured. He had known, or suspected. Ray had hated Elias with a specific venom, and now here sat Lena unknowingly, dining with the only man still chasing justice for both her husband and himself. He rose gently. I should go. Lena looked up startled. I'm sorry, he said, for what they did, for what they didn't. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away slowly, respectfully. You're not done yet, are you? She asked quietly. Marcus didn't answer, but the silence said everything. Duh. That night, the same grey sedan circled the block. Marcus stood under the street lamp watching it pass. No wave, no signal, just acknowledgement. He went inside and retrieved the printed file, the one he planned to mail to Noah. He sealed the envelope, wrote the return address under a false name, and placed it under his coat. Tomorrow he'd drive it to a drop box across the city. But tonight, he stared at the file and whispered one word. Almost. A week later, word spread through the force like fire. Ray Brandt had been arrested. Charges included evidence tampering, excessive force obstruction of justice, and bribery. But what stunned the department most wasn't that he was dirty, it was how he was caught. An anonymous tip had dropped an inch-thick dossier onto Internal Affairs' doorstep, labeled simply Brandt Evidence Chain. No fingerprints, no name. But inside was everything. Timestamps, audio, video, names. More damning than a trial. It was an execution, and the man who dropped it, no one knew. At the precinct, Clarice Dean stood with arms folded. Marcus sat across from her hands, calm in his lap. Quite a shake-up in Eastline, she said. Yes, ma'am. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You ever hear from anyone up there? No, ma'am. She leaned forward. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that file, would you? Marcus met her eyes steady. Only what was on the news. A pause. Then she smiled. You've been a model officer here, Jalen. Quiet, respectful, diligent. He inclined his head. She pushed a small envelope across the desk. Congratulations. You're up for commendation. Full reinstatements on the table. Marcus didn't move. I appreciate it, he said, then rose and left without taking the envelope. Later that day, Lena found him in the park, leaning against the gazebo post, staring at the pond. Is it over? She asked softly. He looked at her. Maybe. She stepped closer. Then what comes next? He smiled for the first time in weeks. Peace. Maybe even flowers. Lena laughed lightly. Good. I think we've earned it. As the wind picked up and scattered petals across the path, Marcus reached out, and this time he took her hand. Not as a promise, just as a beginning. The world didn't change overnight. Ray Brandt was behind bars. His mugshot had run on every local station, staring defiantly into the camera like a man who still believed the city owed him something. But while the precincts whispered and officers scrambled to scrub their pasts clean of affiliation, Marcus kept walking his beat. No reassignment, no parade, no official acknowledgement. That was the way he preferred it. Some afternoons he'd pause outside Lena's house. She always left the gate slightly open for him. They had settled into something quiet and real. No declarations, no need to define what they were. Just two people stitched together by grief patience and the steady rhythm of showing up. She brewed tea with lemon. He fixed the squeaky step on her porch. Sometimes they sat for hours without saying much at all. Other times she asked questions that pulled memories from him, like thread from an old wound. "Were you ever afraid?" she asked, once pouring water into a chipped ceramic cup. Marcus watched the steam rise before answering. "Not when I made the report. Not when they reassigned me." "When then?" He looked at her. "When I realized I couldn't prove anything. That I'd spoken up, and it might not matter." She nodded like she understood too well. But it did. He didn't answer, just took the cup and let its warmth seep into his hands. "Dateba!" Word of his role spread slowly, like coffee through a napkin. Not because he told anyone, he didn't, but the right people knew. The files he had submitted were too thorough to ignore, too meticulously labeled to be coincidence. And then came the knock. One evening after patrol, he opened his door to find Lieutenant Noah Cheng waiting, still lean, still sharp-eyed, still chewing on the same brand of bitter gum he had in Eastline. "You really pulled it off," Noah said, stepping inside without asking. Marcus closed the door behind him. "I did what I had to." Brandt's lawyer is grasping at straws. Claims entrapment. Claims evidence fabrication. Marcus handed him a sealed envelope from a drawer. "Chain of custody is intact. There's a timestamp log from my body cam every time I entered or uploaded anything." Noah opened it, skimmed, then gave a low whistle. "Hell, you really kept everything." Marcus sat down across from him. "You knew what I was doing? You could have warned him." "I didn't know enough to be sure." Noah leaned back. "But I figured, if anyone could wait him out, it'd be you." They sat in silence for a beat. "You know, if you wanted back in," Noah said finally, "you'd be welcomed. Full reinstatement. Your name's clean now." "Hell, it's gold." Marcus shook his head slowly. "I don't want gold. I want peace." Noah smirked. "Then why does it feel like you've still got one eye open?" Marcus didn't reply. He didn't need to. Shh. It was Lena who said it first. They were walking through the small weekend market. Vendors had set up their canopies, and the air smelled of fresh-bred strawberries and soap. A musician strummed an old jazz tune on the corner. Marcus was buying oranges when she nudged him gently. "You know you're allowed to be happy now." He looked down at her. "I'm not unhappy." "That's not what I said." He smiled. "It's hard to adjust. I've lived a long time in wait mode." Lena handed him a flower from a nearby stand. "So stop waiting. Start planting." He looked at the flower, simple yellow, full of light, and he knew it wasn't just about their relationship. It was about the life he had buried under silence and slow revenge. Maybe it was time to unearth it. That. One morning, Sergeant Dean called him in again. "You still haven't accepted your commendation," she said, holding the envelope he'd left untouched. "You understand, this comes with a promotion." "Right," Marcus nodded. "I understand." Dean set the envelope down carefully. "Jalen, you did something most of us wouldn't dare. You waited. You endured. And you brought down a man who made a mockery of our badge." He looked at her. "I didn't do it for a commendation." "I know," she folded her arms. "But others need to see that this kind of work, quiet, disciplined justice, matters. Especially the rookies." Marcus considered that. "Then give the speech," he said. "Read the files. Teach the rookies. But don't put a spotlight on me." She smiled. "You really don't want any of the credit, do you?" "I want fewer kids getting their heads slammed into squad cars." Dean leaned forward. "You know, people are starting to talk. They're saying maybe your transfer wasn't punishment. Maybe someone up top knew what you were doing. Maybe they helped." Marcus didn't blink. "Maybe they did. Maybe they just got lucky." Dean tilted her head. "And Lena? Is she part of your lucky break?" This time he smiled, genuine, without hesitation. "She's the only break I didn't plan." That night, Lena handed him an envelope of her own. "I found this in Elias's things. Never opened it before. Marcus took it carefully. The handwriting was neat. Elias's, inside a folded letter. Marcus, I know what you're trying to do. You think you're the only one who sees it, but you're not. Brant is dangerous. I tried to warn others. No one listens until someone bleeds. If anything happens to me, promise me one thing: don't go loud. Go quiet. Quiet gets in the cracks. Silent justice makes the most noise. ER. Marcus closed the letter slowly, reverently. His throat was tight. He wrote that for you? Lena asked. Marcus nodded. He knew before I did. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Then finish what he started. Not with revenge, with grace. He turned to her, voice soft. I don't know if I deserve grace. You earned it. They stood there for a moment, the letter between them. A weight. A gift. On the anniversary of Carlos Vega's death, Marcus visited the cemetery alone. He placed a white lily on the grave, its stem still damp. I kept your drive, he whispered. I used every second of it. A breeze rolled through the trees, and I never forgot you. As he turned to go, a boy, Luis, stepped out from behind a nearby tree. You came. Marcus paused. Always. Luis held out a folded paper. My cousin wrote this for you. It's a poem. Said if he didn't make it, someone should give it to you. Marcus opened it. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, but full of soul. They silence our breath, but not our echo. One man hears, one man answers. Marcus folded the page carefully and placed it in his chest pocket. As he walked away, Luis called out, What are you going to do now? Marcus didn't stop, but his answer carried on the wind. Live. The precinct's mood had shifted. Where once there had been side glances and silence when Marcus entered the room, now there was a subtle undercurrent of respect. Not open admiration, that wasn't the way cops operated, but nods lingered longer. Voices softened when he walked by. Still, Marcus remained careful, dignified, silent. He wore his routine like armor morning coffee at the corner shop patrol through the East End. Quiet reports filed with consistent accuracy. His rhythm hadn't changed, but the city had. Whispers filled the break rooms. They said Marcus had something to do with Brant's takedown. Some believed he'd planted the evidence. Others insisted he was the ghost behind the wire. No one had proof, and Marcus never corrected them. Back in Grafton Loop, Lena waited with her quiet strength. She didn't push. She didn't ask questions about the attention. But Marcus saw the way she watched the news, now the way her hand stiffened on her teacup when they mentioned Eastline. One evening she said what had been pressing on her heart. They're going to want a statement, something public. Marcus was fixing a loose hinge on her kitchen cabinet. They'll want you to say something, she continued. They'll want to hear how you did it. I didn't do it for them, Marcus said, not looking up. I know. She paused. But silence is a strange thing. People fill it with their own versions of truth. He straightened, then let them. Lena moved closer. Her voice dropped. You didn't just stop, Ray. You cleared Elias's name. You helped Luis. You held on to the truth until it burned your hands. Marcus held her gaze. I did what had to be done. She smiled sadly, beautifully. I know. But sometimes, doing the right thing quietly still deserves a little light. That week his mailbox overflowed. Invitations, commendations, interviews. One came from a national paper, The Quiet Officer Who Took Down a Titan. He threw them all in the bin except one. A letter from a young recruit, handwritten and unsure. Officer Jalen. I joined the force because I wanted to make a difference, but it's hard to know who to trust. When I heard what you did, not just that you stood up, but that you waited, that you endured, it gave me hope. I just wanted to say thank you. C. Porter, 3rd Precinct, probationary officer. Marcus read it twice, then tucked it inside the folded poem from Carlos Vega. 2 small things that reminded him it had mattered. Then came the moment he couldn't avoid. An officer in internal affairs, the same man who once interrogated Marcus during the Ray Brant incident, showed up at Grafton Loop. Captain Danner. Thin lips, neat tie. Eyes like a man who believed in policies more than people. You've been asked to testify, Danner said, placing a document on Marcus's desk. Closed room, no press, just internal review and federal agents. Marcus scanned the request. I thought the evidence was enough. It is. But the timeline, the integrity, that's where your name comes in. Marcus set the paper down. I'll show up. But I'm not making a statement for the press. Why not? Marcus looked up slowly. Because the people who needed to hear the truth already have. Dana didn't argue. That night, Marcus returned home to find Lena sitting on his front steps, coat buttoned to her throat cheeks, flushed from the cold. She handed him a small envelope. I found this in Elias's jacket pocket. I thought maybe you'd want it. He opened it slowly. Inside was a photo. Black and white. Grainy. 3 officers. Elias, Marcus, and Ray Brent. All young, all smiling. Marcus stared at it for a long time. I barely remember that day, he murmured. Lena leaned on his shoulder. It doesn't matter. That smile, that light, it's still in you. You just buried it under duty. He looked at her heart tight. What if that light doesn't fit this world anymore? It's not the world's light. It's yours. He folded the photo gently, tucked it in the same drawer where he kept the poem and the letter. The hearing came on a rainy Tuesday. The room was grey, windowless, filled with quiet tension. Federal agents asked precise questions. What made you decide not to report Brandt's misconduct to the press? What were your motivations for continuing surveillance without department sanction? Did you ever fear retaliation? Marcus answered each calmly, evenly, without emotion. When asked why he waited so long, he gave the simplest answer of all. Because I wanted the truth to hold. The final question came from a grey-haired woman with tired eyes. If no one ever thanked you, if no one ever gave you credit, would you still have done it? Marcus looked at her. Yes, that was all. After the hearing, he stepped outside to find Noah waiting, holding a single cup of coffee. Still hate speaking in public? Noah asked. Marcus took the cup. Worse than foot chases. They stood silently under the grey sky. You know, Noah said Brandt never saw it coming. Not once, not even a whisper. Marcus nodded. That was the point. Noah tilted his head. You ever going to tell anyone how you got half of that footage? Marcus smiled faintly. Some things don't need to be said. They stood there, the rain beginning to fall, soaking the edges of their coats. I'll see you around, Marcus said, stepping off the curb. Yeah, Noah replied. I'll buy the next coffee. The cameras were already in place the next morning when Marcus walked his usual loop through the neighborhood. News vans, microphones, people watching. But no one approached him. He passed them like smoke. Not a word, not a glance. They didn't know he'd declined the interviews. They didn't know he'd given his statement behind closed doors and asked that it not be recorded. All they knew was that this quiet man had stood when others fell. And now, with his collar buttoned tight and his badge gleaming under the low sun, Marcus walked past them all. Not to hide, but to remind himself that silence wasn't weakness. It was discipline. And discipline was what brought justice home. The neighborhood felt different now. Not louder, not flashier, just quieter in a new way, like the city had taken a deep breath after years of holding it in. Kids still rode their bikes past Marcus's patrol route. The corner shop still sold the same bitter coffee. Mrs. Tillman still left her trash out too early. But something had shifted in how people looked at him. No more sidelong glances, no more cautious greetings. Now it was eye contact. Now it was real. He nodded to the mailman, held the door for a mother and her stroller, helped an elderly man fix his mailbox hinge without a word exchanged. These were small things. But Marcus had come to understand that small things done quietly and consistently could shift the weight of a city. He returned home that evening to find Lena waiting with 2 mugs of hot cider. She smiled when he stepped inside, pulling off his coat. Long day. Longer than most, he said. She handed him the cup still warm, and they sat across from each other in the dim light of his front room. No music, no distractions, just the kind of peace that only arrives after something long and hard has come to an end. After a while, she reached into her coat pocket and took out a folded slip of paper. What's this? He asked. It came to my house, addressed to you. He unfolded it. A simple note. They say justice speaks loud, but I think the truest kind moves in silence like you did. Thank you. Anonymous. Marcus read it once, then again, and placed it beside the others. The poem, the photo, the letter from the rookie. All these fragments of lives that had brushed against his each one small, each one weighty. Months passed, then a year. The department held a quiet ceremony, no press allowed, where he received a formal commendation. He accepted it with a soft handshake and a few words no one would remember. He refused all interviews even after the case was mentioned on national news as one of the most significant internal takedowns in the city's history. The only real public photo they ever got of Marcus Jalen was a blurry street shot him crossing the street coat, fluttering in the wind eyes focused ahead. It went viral. They called him the man who waited, but Marcus never responded to the name. One crisp morning he walked past the rebuilt corner bench, now clean painted and shaded under the growing limbs of a young tree. Carlos Vega's mural had been restored nearby this time, protected by city funds. The poem etched into bronze beside it. Some men shout, some men fire, but the ones who kneel and wait hold back the world from burning. Marcus stood there for a while reading it, not moving. He didn't need anyone to know it was about him. He didn't need anything more than this quiet acknowledgement, invisible but permanent. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the sky turned that deep velvet blue, Lena joined him on the steps. He reached over and took her hand. They didn't talk about the past, didn't talk about Brandt or the years lost or the names cleared. Instead, she leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "You okay?" He nodded once. "I am now." And for the first time in years, Marcus Jalen allowed himself to exhale, not in defeat, but in peace. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with a headline. Sometimes it walks quietly, step by step, beside those who carry the burden alone. Marcus Jalen's story reminds us that silence isn't surrender and that integrity, even when invisible, can reshape everything. So let me ask you, have you ever held the truth alone, waiting for the world to catch up? If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, share your own experience, or just say, "Hi." And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, and stay for the next story. We're just getting started.